There was a light in full darkness, a glimmer of hope for those who need. Rest assured that we'll get it. As today's video is about. The Roaring Twenties was a period of many cultural and political changes in the United States of America. This period lasted from the end of the First World War to the moment where grand economic growth occurred, bringing new wacky inventions such as cars and refrigerators. It was also the Prohibition era, and it held many social changes. But one day, it all went down the drain with the crash of the stock market in 1929. People took it for granted. Firstly, black people came to America through the slave trades when Europeans came to America. They were enslaved for many years and then became free citizens of America. The 1920s allowed people to move towards opportunities, and that's why mass migrations came to the largest cities. 1.5 million African Americans migrated towards places like Los Angeles, Chicago, and especially Harlem, which is a neighborhood in New York where 175,000 people came. This time period was heavy in art, and because racism was still prevalent, black people had to prove themselves to the US that they're more than what they've been labeled as for centuries, and art was their way to get recognized. Movies, paintings, poetry, music, all of these forms of art have been worked on with immense creativity. In the literary arts, Alain Locke wrote The New Negro, a sort of manifesto for the black community that compiled works of the leading figures of the Harlem Renaissance. Those were important people like Langston Hughes, Oscar Michaud, Zora Neale Hurston, William Edward Scott, and much more. They all participated in the arts of the Roaring Twenties. But we forgot about one art: music. The musical arts have very much undergone profound transformation during this time, and thanks to this change, we get musical genres such as jazz, blues, R&B, country. Then with better musical technology, we got electric guitars and drums, and those gave birth to rock and roll, pop, and hip-hop. Although the reason why the African American people are so talented in music is thanks to their rich culture for dances and traditions, which was accompanied by a lot of music and rhythm. I mean, just look at all these African drums they have. It's very diverse. And in another way, in the years where black people were under slavery, they could not communicate with one another, but they were allowed to sing and to call upon each other's names.
You turn around, dig a hole in the ground. Oh, Emma, oh.
That's where we get a lot of chants from, as well as a completely new language called Creole, which is derived from the French language.
Si tu peux, comme on dit avant, si tu peux parler de l'anglais, si tu peux parler créole, tu peux courir dans les places.
These recent traditions and talents have moved on to the Harlem scene with the infamous Gospels. American Christianity is pretty different from the other ones, and the version that came from African Americans was different than the white Gospels, as it was pretty hard to believe that the ways of the white man was good in terms of slavery. That's why black people made this new hybrid of the Gospels that holds folk gospel music with a lot of dances and hand clapping. But then we move on to jazz. With the advancements of technologies, directly referring to instruments, black musicians learned these European instruments like the trumpet and the bass, mixing it with a lot of rhythm and style, which have brought color to new genres, jazz being the upbeat genre and blues obviously leaning on the sadder side. Funnily enough, jazz would include dancing, and many dances were made such as the cakewalk, the black bottom, the charleston, and the flea hop. I'm pretty sure these upbeat dances immersed white folks into black culture even further. You should consider the fact that America looked like this about a century ago. You can imagine how black people were pushed aside and seen as a different group of people. Rather than an American citizen, racism was still prevalent. And to put in perspective, you know those songs you hear at the club? Well, 100 years ago, jazz was the banger. Everybody tuned into the radio to listen to some smooth jazz. But old people didn't like it too much.
Sorry, but I need to go on this side tangent. Think about this. Old people from the 1920s didn't like jazz. But then the same little kids that grew up to be old and like jazz, apparently they don't like rock. And these same rockheads, they grew up to be old and don't like mainstream music. What's the next step for us when you think about it? Anyways.
In Chicago, New Orleans, and especially Harlem, jazz easily prospered in the entertainment aspect, with bands playing songs in bars, diners, dance halls, and there's a very historical place in which jazz grew. It was called the Cotton Club.
Why is it called the Cotton Club? Cotton? I'm not too sure.
Despite the racial segregation, black musicians and vocalists prospered in this club, notably with donations from the filthy rich. And this place bred legends like Duke Wellington. He wrote many jazz compositions. But he wasn't the only one. Many great black musicians played a role in all of this. Sidney Bechet, Bessie Smith, Chick Webb, Josephine Baker, Cab Calloway, and like we all know, the myth, the legend,
I see trees of green.
In simpler terms, African Americans shaped most of the American music you see today through their rise in the industry, and the most deep-rooted change was during the Harlem Renaissance. This is all you need to know about black music during the Harlem times. It's very easy to tell yourself,
I only listen to rock.
Or,
I love classical music.
but the sole reason why music is so hyped these days is thanks to the stem of black American music. Thanks for watching this part of the video. Now you can continue with whatever he's gonna propose right now.
Come with me if you want a blast from the past.